Greetings, friends, and welcome to another episode of The Mistake Zone, your weekly dose of our lives and the mistakes within them. My name is Jaren Wade. Joining me, as always, is one of my very best friends in the whole wide world, Matt. Hey, Matt.
Yo.
How are you doing this week?
Yo, I'm doing good.
Matt, this is a very special episode of The Mistake Zone this week,
Mm-hmm.
just because we're continuing our look at, the best anime available on Netflix, Kakegurui. And
Yes.
Matt, for this occasion, we're going through one of my favorite episodes, episode 2 of season 1. And I feel like we needed to bring in an expert, a gambling expert, joining us, from the original Saturday Morning Arcade. He appeared on some episodes of The Mistake Zone, Rakush. Rakush, what do you think of episode 2 of season 1 of Kakegurui?
I thought I was here to talk about the actual good anime on Netflix, Baki the Grappler.
Oh, my dad loves that anime.
Sorry, Rakush. One, I don't know that anime because one, that probably doesn't have any gambling in it, and two, it doesn't have my favorite character Yumiko in it. So let's try that again. Rakush, what do you think of episode 2 of season 1 of Kakegurui?
Are we just gonna keep redoing takes until I say it's good?
Rakush, if you haven't noticed, the Mistake Zone is in dire need of content, and me and Matt both agreed last week that we are probably the internet's premier Kakegurui podcast, and we have to keep going there, you guys. The Mistake Zone, for a podcast that began with the roots of anime, is sorely lacking any anime content. And Matt, do you have any anime content this week?
Of course I don't.
Amazing. Well, guys, I actually do have some anime content this week, surprising enough. And I think it's fitting that Rakush is actually joining us this week because I think one of the last times you were actually on one of these podcasts, Rakush, you were talking about a Dragon Ball movie that I think you saw the day of. And I think it's fate, you guys, because this week I saw the new Dragon Ball movie, Dragon Ball Superhero. My first.
Is that when he joins Fortnite?
Yes. It's actually
pretty
cool just because there's this one scene where Goku has Darth Vader's lightsaber and he's attacking Harley Quinn, who's wielding a charged SMG. It was
nice.
A cinematic masterpiece, you guys. I really recommend it, especially in 4DX. Just because, when Harley's blasting that charged SMG and for some reason snow starts shooting at your face, masterpiece.
But who's The Rock playing in that movie again?
The Rock is actually...
I think he's playing Bulma.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. That's a very Rock type character.
Yeah.
Man. But...
Jaren, how was the scene where Goku finally hit the gritty?
Oh, unfortunately, they actually do something really cool with this movie where I think it's really customized to the audience who's actually viewing it at the time. And unfortunately, my screening didn't have the gritty because it doesn't appear in my locker. But once he did finish off the Rock's character, I noticed Goku throw up the W, like the Wu-Tang W, and Cream started playing. It was great.
Oh, nice. Actually, you know what else I heard? I heard the post-credit scene had a really surprising character in it. Like, I never got to read any of the spoilers. Like, who was it?
Oh, I think that was Indiana Jones, but
true.
I'm also hearing rumors that in a few weeks when they re-release it, Spider-Gwen will actually make an appearance as well.
Oh, nice.
Guys, we're just talking about Fortnite. This is a bad goof, but I love Fortnite. And I guess in terms of video game news, apparently Spider-Gwen is rumored to be in the next season of the Fortnite Battle Pass, which is chapter... It's currently chapter 3, coming up to season 4. And actually, I know I don't want to turn this into a Fortnite podcast, but this is actually a topic that I wanted to kind of get your guys' take on. In that, so we all know what Fortnite is right now. It's this big juggernaut, and then every couple of months they have a new battle pass. And for the last, I want to say 4 or 5 seasons, the level 100, the final unlock at level 100 is usually a character. And for the last 5 seasons, or actually 6 seasons, it's been a licensed character. You had Rick from Rick and Morty. At one point, it was Spider-Man, Carnage, Doctor Strange. This recent one is Darth Vader. And with the rumors of Spider-Gwen, most likely she might be the level 100 skin. And I think a lot of actual Fortnite players aren't really a fan of having these collaborative skins be your level 100 unlock, mostly because if you were to look back at all previous battle passes, prior to all the collab stuff, the level 100 skin was this really, not only was it a unique skin, but it was one where you would unlock different styles. There would be different sets of armor from them. Sometimes one season I remember it being a Viking, and depending on how much additional challenges you do, you'd unlock a lot more armor for that Viking. Eventually he's wearing like the skull helmet. And yeah, but for the most part, considering the level 100 unlocks have been these licensed characters, I know you guys might not be that into Fortnite, but kind of as outsiders looking in, what do you think about kind of how commercialized it has become, and seeing like once a battle pass giving you these really unique looking characters has kind of been reduced to just license bait?
There's no difference to them from the like one you can just buy normally, is there?
I think this is kind of the wild thing. Take Spider-Man, he was a level 100 unlock, I believe, last season. Mm-hmm. That was just OG original Spider-Man, and then he had bonus styles of the symbiote suit and the Future Foundation suit. After that season, you can't get that Spider-Man anymore. The only Spider-Man you can buy is like the Tom Holland MCU Spider-Man, or the unique Spider-Man they did for the 0 Point Comics, that their collaboration with Marvel. So not only are the level 100 skins essentially collabs now, but they're actually, as I said, these pretty big name skins that you can't get anymore just because they've been locked to the battle pass, and the only way you can sort of get them now is other variations. So I guess that also speaks to kind of how not only is it you have to unlock these characters really late into the battle pass, but the fact that they're just these one and done things also adds to the whole FOMO thing. And I guess I'll revise that question. As an outsider looking in, how does that actually make you feel, especially you, Rakush, as a fan of comics, to see all these, iconic characters essentially be locked away in battle passes that you can never get if you were to start today?
That's actually an interesting question too, because like, I guess like the first thing I should say is the way I consume Fortnite is through memes on Twitter at this point. Like, honestly, like the moment that the whole MLK thing happened, I think it was either last year or the year before. It's all like the last couple of years are a blur. But it's never been looking at that game objectively. It's never been looking at that game as a business or like, as a crossover venture or anything like that. It's always just been like, what is the memeiest thing that comes out of it, right? And when I was younger, I think I would have been a lot more sensitive to seeing like, these IPs that I was like super loyal to or like super passionate about suddenly get like thrown into Fortnite, and then you see like, I guess you could call them like bastardized versions, but I'm not actually sure if they're bastardized versions anymore. And then it's just kind of like, now I look at it and I'm like, yeah, sure, why the fuck not? Add Goku in there, add like Spider-Gwen in there, add all these characters in there, right? Because if the argument towards that is, oh, these aren't accurate representations of the character, think of it from this perspective. There's a lot of people playing Fortnite that never would have gone and watched Dragon Ball or never would have gone and read Spider-Man comics that might be more inclined to do that because they saw this character in Fortnite as well. So I think that's where I'm at now is, yeah, it's obviously a cash grab and a licensing cash grab as well, but comic book characters, anime characters have a history of merchandising. Like, that's not something new. So this is just kind of like a new venue for that same kind of licensing to happen as well. So I don't take it as like a problem. I just kind of look at it, I laugh, I giggle, like chuckle at like, the Goku with the automatic rifle meme, and just kind of go like, yeah, sure, why not, right? And like just kind of keep it moving, I guess. If that answers the question, I'm not sure, but yeah.
No, like that's totally, Matt, like what we talked about a few weeks ago during the Multiverses episode, where in something like in the case of Fortnite, I kind of do see it as this toy box where you're essentially playing with your action figures. To me, Fortnite's no different than when I was growing up, and then all my, action figures from Marvel and like the WWF. They were all in my own fictitious wrestling league, and I was making everyone do pile drivers and power bombs to each other. And I think to a kid these days, this is essentially their toy box.
Yeah, that's a great comparison.
But at the same time, I think it's a bit wild to me when you consider going back to the topic of locking all these characters to battle passes, where I think I was telling Matt you this a few weeks ago too, where I think it's kind of wild where, Superman, Lara Croft, Spider-Man, Darth Vader, all of these iconic characters in their original costumes for the most part. If you were to start Fortnite today, you can never get these characters just because they've been locked into battle passes. And I think one of the discussions that has been really frequent in the community is the discussion of, should Epic bring back battle passes, and what does that do to the feeling of not only FOMO but this weird attachment of saying, hey, I own this, I grinded this, it's not fair to bring this back when I worked hard to do it or unlock everything years ago. So Matt, I'm not sure how much you dabble in battle passes in general amongst all the games you play, but where do you kind of stand in the argument between, hey, should battle passes eventually come back, or should these stay locked away forever once they're done?
I think that they should come back, but I'm also going to say that with the caveat of, if you are bringing back a battle pass, like, I don't know how Fortnite does it, but are you locked to a single battle pass once you, like, or I guess Fortnite's always only had one battle pass going at a time, right?
Yes.
Okay, because I know there's some other games that like let you bring a battle pass or keep the battle passes active, but you can start the new one, or you can continue contributing to the old ones, which I think is probably the best way to do it, because at least that way there's always new battle pass content and there isn't the feel of FOMO.
Right.
But I fully understand, Epic's decision to make people want to feel FOMO and play their game as much as they can.
If I can add to that as well, I think like part of it, if you look at it from the business perspective, is there any advantage to these licensors, just renewing their contracts with Fortnite as well, right? Like, do they actually have something to promote with that stuff as well? Kind of looking at it from the business perspective, I'm not 100% certain how smart of an idea it is. And I guess also like just gaming in general over the last 13, 14 years that online gaming has been a thing, I guess, like limited edition skins and stuff like that have existed, right? Like a point of reference for me is League of Legends. Like, they used to have limited edition skins that would disappear after say like a month or 2 months, or Street Fighter having like Evo exclusive skins or like Evo exclusive stages and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily exclusively to like an exclusive limited thing to Fortnite itself, but yeah, I think it's okay to kind of have limited edition skins. I think it's okay to kind of miss out on some of these things sometimes, right? Because I get it, like, if you start today, you might not get Darth Vader's skin or whatever, but there might be other promotions that come up that you might get skins to and stuff as well. Like, I don't think it's like that big of a deal to not have all the skins personally.
Yeah, I don't know, guys. It is that weird addition of like this weird feeling of FOMO, of kind of missing out, where I think my biggest Fortnite regret is the fact that I missed one of the Chapter 2 seasons that was purely a Marvel Battle Pass. And again, this is the area where I can't get Wolverine, like classic comic Wolverine. I can't get Storm anymore. I can't get classic Thor. Not that I care. I think the only thing that hurts is I can't get Doctor Doom anymore. And that's the one that got away from me, you guys. But other than that, I think, sorry for bringing up Fortnite, this was a long way to get to the fact that I, bringing it back, I did watch the new Dragon Ball movie, Dragon Ball Super Superhero, this week, and I actually had a really good time with it. Overall, I really enjoyed the movie. For someone that hasn't really engaged with the Dragon Ball, franchise in general in a good while, the last thing I really did was Dragon Ball Fighter Z, the fighting game that Arc System released a few years ago. But it was really a really nice bite-sized nostalgia trip. And for someone who didn't really know much going in, actually, before I continue, do you guys know anything about the new Dragon Ball movie?
I literally found out the day it released that there was a new Dragon Ball movie in the works. So not much.
Okay.
Yeah, I found out about it when you went to go watch it.
Yeah, but for someone that didn't really know much going on, I really like that it was centered around Piccolo, surprisingly enough. I think because, again, tying this back to the Fortnite collaboration that they did with Dragon Ball recently, when that collab happened, it was Goku, Vegeta, Beerus, and Bulma as the 4 collab characters that appeared in Fortnite. So I thought, oh, okay, this will just be centered around Goku and Vegeta. Beerus will play a part, Bulma will be there. But for the most part, this is a movie about Piccolo and Gohan. And it was actually surprising where a lot of the different characters that you kind of come to expect are more so reduced to quick appearances and cameos, which really caught me off guard. Again, I haven't really watched a Dragon Ball movie before, but Rakush, from the ones you've watched in the past, did it feel similar where it feels like they're kind of just throwing in all the fan favorite characters just to tick off boxes other than actually have some sort of story implications?
Yeah, so I think the timing on this is great because I actually just started a rewatch of the original Dragon Ball as well. So like having watched all of it, including GT, I would definitely say that the best thing Dragon Ball has done is realize that it's not that serious. And It's become fan servicey because of that, yes. However, I think there is a certain element of like, yeah, sure, they're here for 30 seconds, why the hell not kind of thing. This might be a trend in my answers tonight, I don't know. But yeah, I think like going back, I think the last movie before this one was Brawly, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that one was pure fan service as well. Not as many characters in that one. There was a couple of cameos. I think like Piccolo popped up for a bit. I can't remember if Gohan popped up for a bit. I think all of the characters popped up for a little bit, but then it was predominantly focused on like Goku, Vegeta, and Brawly kind of fighting each other.
Right.
I think the Frieza one was about the same. Dragon Ball Super in general is the one where it's really embraced the fan service, where it's like, oh yeah, like here's them doing slice of life stuff, like, you know, Gohan just being a regular adult working dad, you know. It's like they do a lot of that stuff. I actually don't know a lot about this new movie that you just watched, so I'm not 100% certain how similar it is to the previous movies, but if you're saying that it's heavy on the fan service and like quick character appearances here and there, then yeah, it's kind of continuing that tradition.
Okay. Yeah, I was actually, because you guys know me, I grew up with Dragon Ball Z, so I'm used to the meme of, oh, everything takes like 6 episodes for something to actually happen. So it's kind of a bit weird seeing a more truncated arc being presented as a film where everything is just one and done within an hour and 40 minutes, where I think if this were to translate into an actual season, this would probably be 12, 13 episodes. But it was really nice to see. And there's actually a tiny cameo of Android 21, who was the original character that they introduced in Fighter Z.
Oh, that's cool.
Which I really popped for it just because I didn't actually remember how canon she was overall. Again, it's nothing a lot. It's mostly like a background picture, but just to see how she has been implemented into, I guess, the movie, that was really fun to me. But yeah, kind of speaking to what you said about Super Rakush, there were quite a few slice of life moments that I really enjoyed, just because you guys know me, that's my favorite genre of anime in general. But in terms of the actual action and overall fight scenes, it just really reminded me how much I enjoyed watching Dragon Ball growing up and just seeing all the different fights. So again, it was nice since I don't have a lot of recent experience with these characters. So to see where they are now, how much they've grown yet stayed the same, it was a really enjoyable experience and a really great way to spend an hour 40. I didn't take it seriously. But I feel like with Dragon Ball and anime in general, like you just have to have fun with it, and I had a lot of fun seeing this.
I
But
think that's a great mentality to have, man. Have you? I got a question for you. Have you watched the entirety of Super? Have you watched the DBZ standalone movies and all that stuff?
Rakush, you know me. Matt knows me as well. I haven't, just because if I am watching anime, it is of the cute girl doing cute things variety. So I think the only experience I have with Super is the occasional, oh, my YouTube algorithm recommended me a slice of life clip. I'll watch it. Then I'll watch 5 more clips that were recommended, go to a friend and say, hey, is Super just slice of life Dragon Ball? And for every slice of life scene I watch, apparently there's, I don't know, like 8 episodes of shonen action. So that's why I haven't necessarily, taken the time to actually watch it as well. But if I ever do, I think Super is something I do want to check out.
Yeah, I can honestly probably give you a couple of episodes that are just slice of life as well. So like if you're not interested in any of the fights, you just kind of want to see people living lives and stuff like that, I could probably find a list of those episodes for you.
Does Super still, I don't want to say struggle, but still present the thing where, it is the Dragon Ball meme of, hey, it's going to take them like 8 episodes to power up and finally finish this fight. Is that still a thing, or are the fights, again, truncated into shorter bite-sized bursts?
I would say it is not as egregious as Dragon Ball Z was, but it does still have that to a certain extent.
Right.
I think it does what a lot of the other Shonen Jump series recently have done, especially like One Piece would do, where it's like it'll play the intro for like a minute and a half, 2 minutes, it'll do 4 minutes of a recap, and then it'll show you the new content after that. So like their way of stretching it out while showing you new stuff is like to show you old stuff for the first 6 minutes, basically. I think if you're binging it, it's a little bit easier to get through a lot of the stuff, to be honest with you. But it's not completely bereft of like the same issues that Dragon Ball Z had with the power-ups and stuff like that.
Okay.
In fact, funny enough, like so when Dragon Ball Z came back, it came back with kind of like the God of Destruction and Resurrection of F movies. So the movies came out first. Those are extremely popular worldwide. And then they came out with the Dragon Ball Super TV show, which the first, I think, 15, 20 episodes focused exactly on those 2 movies. And a lot of people complain about the same thing, which is like, hey man, like this was like 3 hours worth of movies that we watched, and now we suddenly have to sit for like 20 episodes, which is like pretty much half a year waiting for the new content to show up. Right. And it had a lot of struggles early on because of that too.
Oh man, yeah. I think I'll get those recommendations, and hopefully I'll throw them in the background one of these days. But I think a lot of friends also know that I've been procrastinating on just consuming anime and manga in general. I think one of my friends is still annoyed at me that I still haven't read through Spy Family, and I put that in the back burner for so long, to the point where the anime just recently came out. And now that the anime came out, I can't be a snob and say, ooh, the manga was better, because I just haven't gotten around to reading the manga. So that's my quick review of Spy Family, you guys. But yeah, overall, again, I really enjoyed the new Dragon Ball Super movie. I did watch it dubbed. I was kind of walking in expecting it to be subbed, but it ended up being dubbed. Not that I had really any pressing issues about that, considering that's how I consumed Dragon Ball growing up, but I was a bit disappointed with that. But yeah, I do recommend it. And I'll be honest, you guys, this Saturday for Cineplex, and there's, cinema celebration day or whatever, all their movies for all the different kind of theater, like, the VIP, the IMAX, everything's going to be $3. I'm gonna go watch Dragon Ball again in 4DX. So I'll report back next week to see how this whole 4DX experience plays out, just because I looked up what 4DX was. Guys, it sounds stupid.
What is it?
Is the 4 not just movement?
4DX is its movement, but there's also different, I think, like sprinklers and cannons all around the theater where, it can shoot out mist, it can do wind, it can do bubbles. There's going to be flashes of light if there's lightning. So I think it just sounds really obnoxious and stupid, and that's partly the reason why I want to check it out, because normally it's $20 to watch a 4DX movie, and there's no way I'm going to pay $20 to watch a 4DX movie. But if you're telling me I can rewatch a Dragon Ball movie I enjoyed, plus see what 4DX is all about for $3, guys, I have to do that.
That sounds like the same gimmick they used to have at either Palladium or Wonderland. They used to have like this theater set up there, and like I don't think that's like as new a technology as they're advertising it as.
Yeah, I think then it was 5D, wasn't it? They lost a whole D.
Yeah,
at Palladium.
No, I mean like in terms of time. I'm pretty sure like before, because I remember that stuff from like Disney. Because I specifically remember a Honey I Shrunk the Kids, where there's like all these rats that run by you, and then they simulate rats running by your feet.
No.
I was wearing slippers because it was Florida, right? And I was
that's
like,
gross.
No, this is bad.
Man, so I think I'm going with Saturday morning friend Kevin, and I asked him, hey, where do you want to sit? Do you mind getting, like, if you get soaked a bit? And he's like, wait, are we seeing a movie or like a theme park ride? So I think this is just morbid curiosity on my part, just to see how bad this gets.
Is there a lot of water in that movie?
I think it's just, see, when I saw the 4D stuff, I was kind of replaying how much, what like effects that we can actually do that makes sense. And I don't think there's any water portions, but I know I was reading through some Reddit threads about, hey, is 4DX worth it? And I think the general consensus is the first half, not really, but the second half, it really goes in and you might get wet. And I'm really curious where the wet actually comes in play.
I think they just meant you might get really excited.
We'll see about that, Rakush. Matt, if you're actually in, just let me know.
No, I don't want to get beat up by Goku. I'm good.
Okay, fair enough. Speaking of the Dragon Ball sequel and not playing video games this week, I know you guys brought up something that you wanted to talk about, and it's something that I've been kind of racking my brain over, but I think the topic for our main event for this week is, what video games were you surprised never got a sequel? And when this was actually presented to me, I was actually pretty stumped, just because before we actually get into it, does this conversation change considering how many, re-releases, remasters, remakes are coming out? Do you guys consider that part of the, does that fill in the need for a sequel, or is that just salt in the wounds at this point?
I think it depends on what kind of re-release it is. Like, if it's something along the lines of the Resident Evil re-releases, then I can kind of see that being enough for the fans that want more Resident Evil, right? Like, they're putting a lot of work into those remakes. It's not just remasters, like retextures or anything like that. But I think if it is just a retexture, then I think like it's more of a, I don't think it's an issue necessarily, but I think it's like it's not satisfying the fans enough. I guess, like, Jaren, you can maybe speak a little bit to those Tony Hawk remakes, right? Like, those were obviously something that were nostalgic, potentially meaningful releases as well. Like, did they do enough with that remake, I guess, before we jump into the sequel conversations, to like satisfy what you were expecting from the game?
I think in particular with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, I think I had the same sentiment I did with a lot of different fans, where it was actually just nice to be able to play an updated remaster of the Tony Hawk games that actually stayed true to the original. I think fans of the franchise have been burned in the past, especially with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater HD, where the physics didn't feel quite right. Maybe the level selection wasn't up to everyone's taste, but to see, all the characters, all the skaters that we grew up with come back, all the levels that we played, and it actually feel like the Tony Hawk that lived in our head, I think that was just a good return to form. But for me, I think the issue with the remasters and the re-releases, even if they do put in the work, it just creates that itch where when Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 came out, it just gave fans hopes in that, maybe they're going to release 3 and 4, and to hear that was actually in the works or being considered before Vicarious Visions became another arm of Blizzard to work on Diablo 4, I think that actually kind of just makes it worse because you saw the potential there. And maybe with the whole Microsoft consuming Activision, maybe there's hope for us to see Tony Hawk again. But I think I'm in the camp of, even if it's a really good remaster or remake, that even though it may temporarily scratch the itch, at that point, you may be left with wanting more just because you have a taste of what these things can be in the modern age, especially if done well. But if all of a sudden it just goes away, I think you're left in another situation where you're kind of just longing it for it to return. But yeah, Matt, before we go on to talk about the sequels, do you have any thoughts on remasters and re-releases?
I personally am not, like, I don't think it scratches the same itch as a full re-release, like you said. It really does just make you think, oh, I wish there was a new one. And I think it's especially bad for me in particular because I personally don't like replaying games.
Right.
So a remaster doesn't really do much for me to begin with.
Yeah, and I guess like there's also the element of not being able to see the developers and the game itself grow, right? With the sequel, like if you're just playing this, like Last of Us got another re-release recently for like $70. I know like that's in the news, and it's like, sure, you could just keep re-releasing that game, but at some point, have you as an organization, as a studio, not evolved beyond just coming out with that game over and over again? Like, have you not kind of grown out or grown into like new technology? Like, is this just a cash grab? I don't know, right? Like, I mean, that's also kind of part of it too, where it's like, at some point there are going to be diminishing returns on all these re-releases. Like the joke that's been going on for the last decade with like Skyrim coming out on everything, like it's literally playable on fridges at this point, you know? So it's like, at some point, yeah, like I would love to see newer like releases for these games. I'd love to see developers try new things, like take more risks and chances. But I guess like that doesn't speak as much to the sensible business side of things, which kind of sucks.
Okay, no, I feel that. Again, I know we're supposed to talk about the games we want sequels for,
Yeah.
but one final question for me. Do mods help this in any way? I know, Rakush, you said, oh, you brought up Skyrim, and Julian, the professor, friend of Saturday Morning, said, you know, in passing, if Skyrim's so good, why isn't there a Skyrim 2? So in the case of not having a sequel and just wanting more content, do you guys feel that user mods can scratch an itch, or do you miss kind of seeing the official authentic release coming out?
Depends on the mod, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on if the mod is adding content, changing content, like what exactly it's doing. For the most part,
Yeah.
like I think mods help on a replay to make it not feel like you're just playing the same game again. But I don't, at least personally for me, I don't think they scratch the same itch unless it's just a fully like newly made campaign, which also is maybe kind of iffy because usually these are like fan things and those tend to be very hit or miss.
Right. The quality might not be there. Mm-hmm. And I know there's a million Skyrim mods that have been adding to the longevity of the game for how many years now, but at the same time, I think I'm a stickler of, okay, you're pushing this engine to the limits. And going back to what Rakush says, not only do you want to see how much a development team has grown or what the new blood can bring in, but you kind of just want to see where the technology can bring this series, can bring this franchise to in the modern day. And yeah, I think, okay, guys, let's finally get to it. Let's not necessarily scratch the itch, but kind of look at it and make it even more itchy.
Real quick, before we go into the sequels,
yeah.
So you guys mentioned Julian. I think he would be a great person to talk about how mods can extend the shelf life of a game because he's been playing New Vegas in different variations for the last decade, I think. But also it's like, this is something I've noticed more as like I consume speedruns more, is it also depends on the simplicity of the game design, the game structure, and the mods itself, right? Like old side-scrolling games have been getting Kaizo level edits. Like Super Metroid has gotten so many different level edits that make it fresh to try out and play. Or like Super Mario Kaizo runs are like, you know, these extremely challenging runs as well. Like I think those kind of games, obviously, you have to rely on the mods to extend the shelf life.
Right.
There are ways of creating mods that can do that, but I think it's just that, like, with newer games, it's more difficult to create those mods, right? Like, it's I don't think it's as simple as pixel counts, but it is just the simplicity of, like, creating new assets for that game, and that doesn't really exist for new releases anymore. So just wanted to say that as well.
Yeah, I think we can even dedicate entire segments to mods, but
Yeah.
at this point, Matt, what's one game you're surprised never got a sequel?
I mean, while we're still on this remakes thing, I actually don't know if this game counts, actually. Shadow of the Colossus never got a sequel in the sense that of you fighting Colossus.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was a game in a series, right? Because it's part of like Eco and Last Guardian. So I don't know if that really counts, but there was never a gameplay-like game that Shadow of the Colossus, which again has gotten multiple remakes. There's never like an actual game in, I think, that gameplay style, which I really would like.
I think, like, like, Last Guardian was the spiritual successor to that stuff, but there was no story sequel to it. Shadow of the Colossus was technically the sequel to Eco itself, but, like, yeah, they never really continued that story beyond it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but that actual style of gameplay, you don't necessarily see a lot in kind of just gaming in general. This idea of actually having to really, because to me, Shadow of the Colossus it's not necessarily a platformer, but it's kind of in the same vein as this puzzle where you're trying to traverse these giant creatures and then to ultimately, give them the finishing blow. And I've been trying to think, has there been a game of recent times that kind of invoke that same feeling? Because I don't think, you would think that just being able to fight monsters in that way would, create some really good storytelling opportunities or just even gameplay opportunities. But I feel like that hasn't necessarily come to fruition within the past couple of years. And does anything come to your mind for that? Or do you think that style of gameplay has just evolved into something else?
No, I think like that specific style of gameplay I think is like gone. I think honestly the closest thing that if you were to explain the mechanics of Shadow of the Colossus as like, I don't know, a puzzle climbing game, the closest thing you'd ever find to that I think is like Catherine.
Oh,
but
wow.
that's very much like not the same.
I was not expecting that comparison.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that, but I can see where you're coming. Definitely seeing where you're coming from.
Yeah,
and I don't know, because I feel like Monster Hunter has. I'm not saying they're the same game, but I feel like Monster Hunter has, taken the market in terms of, hey, here's you fighting these big creatures, and in a way, same with the Souls games with these big, not necessarily gigantic, but intricate boss fights that are puzzles in a certain way, where I'm just wondering if we don't necessarily get something like Shadow of the Colossus due to mostly how not necessarily action packed it is, where if you want the feeling of fighting big monsters, you do have these in, a Monster Hunter in the Souls games where they're much more combat heavy, where they're much more reflex intensive. But at the same time, if you wanted the puzzle aspects of a Shadow of the Colossus, I think you're just better off playing puzzles at this point. So yeah, no, that's definitely something I'm really curious why we haven't necessarily gotten a sequel to Shadow of the Colossus, but like anything more within that shared universe, I guess. But
do you guys think part of that is because of the budget that goes into making games like that? Like, to me, a game like Shadow of the Colossus has definitely inspired indie developers to try similar things on, like, maybe like different genre of games, but like as far as like big budget games kind of playing like that, feeling like that, I'm not sure if we'll ever really see that as frequently as we did, at least in the early to mid 2000s.
I think like price is a very important thing, but like I also think that I don't know how you guys feel about this particular aspect of sequels, but the thought of what do you change or improve or add to a game, like particularly Shadow of the Colossus, which is essentially just a very slow boss run game to like make it, I guess, more interesting or feel like it's not just DLC at this point, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, because I think for a sequel you would need to have the mechanic. Not, I would assume that a Shadow of the Colossus sequel would be, hey, here's more bosses, here's a bigger world, here's a more open world, here's different mechanics that will go into these different puzzles, and maybe there are more miniature and something like that. It's really difficult just because you do have to think of the story implications specifically for Shadow of the Colossus, but also in terms of the actual gameplay mechanics, what they can actually add to make it more interesting. And going back to Rakush, your point about the budget, I think this is what really worried me about this topic, if I was completely being honest, just because I think in a lot of examples, especially within 2022, when you ask, hey, I wonder why this game hasn't gotten a sequel, is because, well, financially, who wants to put the risk into making a sequel when you can do the sure bet of, oh, here's our, tried and true combat, here's the battle pass, here's the microtransactions. Like, I think this conversation gets a lot more cynical when you think about, oh, I know why we didn't get a sequel, just because they couldn't find a way to monetize it. So I think I needed to add that before we go back to having fun. But
yeah, that's a valid point too, right? Where it's like, I mean, like it's a sad valid point. I would love to see a lot more creativity and imagination get larger budgets, right? Like what can some of these like cool ideas that come out like, really look like if they have like, this multi-million-dollar
right
whole studio development team behind it and stuff like that. I would love to see it. I think like Sony tried that, right, with The Last Guardian. Like they gave them almost a decade to make this game, and it was fine, I think, at the end of it. I think if you ask them, did it do what they were trying to, like what they had set out to do, I think they might be overwhelmingly positive on that stuff, but at least I would imagine so. But yeah, like I would love to see more imagination in that stuff. And yeah, I like, you make an excellent point there. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, I know I remember being frustrated a few weeks ago, and I'm not sure if I was sharing this frustration with you guys, where I didn't understand the take that, oh, gaming today is so stale, because not only, can you play whatever video game has come out in forever so far, but everything is so accessible these days. Not only are there more games than ever, but there's so many different services where you can find new games to play with. Say what you will about Gamepass, but if you're subscribed to that, you have your selection of all these great different games to play through. You can get free games every week in the Epic Store. There are a lot of strong indie games. So that's where I was coming from, where, oh yeah, gaming right now is super stale. I don't see how people can say gaming's stale. And then this is where a lot of friends were like, yeah, but that's mostly in the indie space, where we're not getting sequels to, I know like Sega says they're making a new Jet Set Radio, but for the longest time, this is the reason why we're getting spiritual successors, not necessarily sequels, just because even if, the indie games are thriving, even though there's a lot more choice and experimentation right there, at the end of the day, the AAA studios are making kind of tried and true what is their bread and butter, and we are seeing a lot less experimentation. But hopefully we'll get to a point where we do get to see, the rise of the B game again, the rise of these modest-sized budgets, but with more entertaining kind of gameplay elements or new ideas. But that's just me being the cynical party here. Rakush, what game are you surprised never got a sequel?
Man, honestly, like when we were talking about this topic originally, I was just like, I just want to talk about Sleeping Dogs. Because that game, I'm kind of like Matt in that, like, I don't replay a lot of games. Right. I don't think I've ever actually beaten a game twice, but Sleeping Dogs is one of those games that, like, I really tried going back to very frequently, or like, and at a different life, I guess. Like, and now when I think about that game, I'm like, yeah, that actually might be something I might start up again as well. All kind of like stemmed from like Saints Row recently just got re-released. There was like a reboot. Embracer Group put that one out, and it got me thinking. Like that one has gotten so many different sequels to the point where it's almost kind of become, at least as a franchise, it's kind of become a little bit stale. And it got me thinking. It's like, man, like why have companies not tried putting out sequels to some of these more imaginative stories, imaginative worlds, just games. And like I wouldn't necessarily call the gameplay in Sleeping Dogs unique and imaginative, because it takes a lot of strong elements from different games, right? Like the combat is very much like the Arkham series. It's open world like GTA, but it's really the storytelling that really, really made that game stand out. As I think it came out in 2022. It might actually have been a decade, a couple of weeks back. And when I think back to that in 2012, first off, how many games did you have where you had a Western Asian representation on camera? It's not something I'd realized back then, but when I look back at it now, it's kind of something from that period of games development. It's pretty impressive. Minus the Emma Stone VO scenes for the 2 clips in that game, but that was a cool part of it. It was heavily inspired by movies that I Hong Kong crime action movies that in my late teens, young adult years were extremely influential as far as what my current tastes are in media, so when I think back to that game, it's all very fond because it did something that even to this date feels unique, and that's saying something a decade later. I know they tried with the Triad Wars thing, which it didn't even get out of beta. They were yeah, never mind, you guys don't want this. So yeah, I think that's the big one where it's it was super unfortunate that Square Enix had such lofty expectations of a game like that, where it needed to prove itself first. And it's from a period of when Square Enix was actually extremely unrealistic with all of their games. So it's I remember episodes in the past where we've talked about Tomb Raider selling millions of copies and them considering it a failure, and I just wanted to talk about Sleeping Dogs as well. And then recently I just saw Embracer Group actually bought out all of Square Enix's North American studios apparently, and that might include them owning the Sleeping Dogs IP now. So it's I don't know if it's too late for us to get the kind of sequel that we're looking for. I was specifically looking for, but that's the one that always comes to mind when I think about games that never got sequels.
I think Sleeping Dogs currently is in an interesting position just because, as you said, I'm not 100% sure if it was part of the Embracer Group purchase, but considering that they technically also have Saints Row under their belt, I wonder if there are higher ups within the company saying, okay, how can we capitalize on this open world genre once again? Just because I'll try to relate this to my number one answer, which would be, of course, Bully, and to a certain extent, LA Noire, where those were 2 big Rockstar titles back in their days. LA Noire had all this hype about all the facial techniques and the cameras that captured all the different facial expressions for you to actually go through with your investigations. And then Bully was just this, albeit controversial, but it was a more bite-sized, digestible GTA light experience, which I really enjoyed. And I think in between it being quirky and charming in its own way, I was really surprised that we haven't seen a sequel. And to kind of go back to Sleeping Dogs, and as you said, Rakush, with Triad Wars, we have seen over the past couple of years, especially with Bully, the fabled Bully 2, where there seems to be all these attempts at kind of bringing them back, but depending on the state of the current publisher, whether it be Rockstar, whether it be Square Enix, if they can't really necessarily, to me at least, find a way to properly, not only, I'd like to believe, innovate, but more realistically, more likely is not knowing how to properly actually monetize it. I think with the advent of GTA Online, it's really hard for me to actually see anything from anything other than the next GTA to come out of Rockstar, especially if, you know, Red Dead 2 came out, but its online portion didn't necessarily set the world on fire. So
Yeah.
I think with me, as much as I do want to see Bully, as much as I wouldn't mind playing another LA Noire 2, it's okay, they're going to be released in the shadow of GTA 6, and how much does GTA Online, and how much does GTA Online's existence kind of affect this? But if I were to dream, I'd love to see what they would do with a Bully 2. There was always this notion in me where, oh, they can definitely bring in a pair of siblings, whether you have, you know, a brother and a sister, and then have two different aspects about what it means to be a bully. And at the same time, it's this curiosity of, oh, when do you make it take place? Just because it's so much more, high school is such a different beast now. Do you make it like a private school academy so far? How much technology do you implement? Is there email? Is there social media? Is there smartphones? And I guess with that, you also have to consider not only the GTA Shadow port, but also how controversial would this be accepted or be seen in 2022, considering it was pretty controversial when it first came out.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions for you as well. It's like, what would that discourse be around Bully if it released today? Because I know, like, nostalgia can make anything seem like a fond memory. I think, yeah, like you said, like, Bully even back then was obviously extremely controversial. Like, it's not even called Bully outside of North America, if I understand correctly, you know? So
wait, what's it called?
It was, I forget, it was Latin. Wasn't it Latin for dog eat dog or something like that?
Okay, it had a creative name, I guess.
Yeah, but the more time passes in between Bully and then Bully 2 supposedly coming out, the more I think it's just going to be a difficult thing to release, especially with how social media is these days and how everyone can be so up in arms on something, you know, for good or for bad, where as much as I'm curious about it, the more we go without seeing it come out, the more I'm worried about what discourse it will be. And if they can actually stick the landing, just because, while I think, Matt, I told you this when you were talking about the GTA 6 rumors from that Bloomberg report, and I'm really curious what Rockstar of 2022 is like compared to the Rockstar of, you know, 2012, and at the same time, how, if there's this idea of, okay, with GTA 6, we don't want the humor to be punching down, we want it to kind of punch up, we don't want to, you know, rely on the previous controversies that we may have before. Again, like, how do you make a tasteful bully in 2022 when the lives of high school students right now is just so far removed from what we grew up with? I don't know. I think that's that might be a heavier topic than we're willing to go through.
Yeah, I guess like the original Bully was heavily inspired by like their 80s movies as well, right? Where it's like Revenge of the Nerds and that kind of stuff as well. But like, I don't know what the current equivalent of that would be. Like, would it be like a game inspired by Mean Girls or something like that?
I feel like if you're going to do a current game of Bully, you would have to either, if you guys remember that game, Emily is Away, or it's basically just virtualized Facebook.
Right,
yeah.
I feel like you have to do something like that. Or if you want to make it like super modern, you bring Bully back as like cyberbullying, and it's like a mobile exclusive game, and it's basically just a mobile interface the whole time.
That's gonna grab the headlines for sure at that point.
That would be an amazing goof.
Oh,
that would hella like light up headlines probably, but man, that would be I would like to see that, to be honest.
Do you think Bully, as it was coming out in 2022 for the first time, would have been positively received?
Probably not.
See, I liked Bully just because, again, it was this, you know, bite-sized version of GTA. I honestly think at the time of all the Rockstar games, I think it had the best combat just because it was a bit more in-depth than, I think, the GTA trilogy at the time. You didn't have cars, but you had bikes. You had all these quirky characters. So I think for what Bully was when it did come out, it it took a lot of its strengths from GTA. And if it were to come out in 2022, again, you're living in the, I would assume this comes out after GTA 5 and the massive hit that is GTA Online, where I don't think people would be that more welcoming for it, just because at this point we're so far removed from GTA 5 that people would most likely just want GTA 6. And again, considering how cinematic Red Dead has become, I think if Bully in its original state were to come out now, I think it would really benefit from all the different technological advances and just all the different ways of storytelling that have come from Rockstar Games. But at the same time, I think while it may still hold up to me, it doesn't. I think for new audiences who are more accustomed to modern Rockstar, I don't think it would have been received that well. So that's kind of where I'm coming from it, where it's a good game, but I feel like it has to be, Bully in itself doesn't stand toe to toe with Red Dead 2 and GTA 5, which is saying something considering how old GTA 5 is.
Another thing I found interesting about like the 4 games that we mentioned is they were all predominantly single player focused, right? Like Sleeping Dogs, I can't remember what its online presence was. I can't remember what LA Noir's online presence was, but the other 2 games are like single player games.
Yeah.
So it's like, I also wonder how much of that goes into consideration as well now, right? Like with these big studio games, everything has to have some sort of online connectivity. And I'm not sure how you make that work in the Bully universe. Sleeping Dog seems like it's a bit more straightforward to do, but like, how do you do that for Bully? How do you do that for Shadow of the Colossus? Even for LA Noire, I'm not 100% certain about that.
And this is how we bring it back full circle to the beginning with the battle passes and the FOMO, you guys. Like, again, this is kind of the video game industry we're looking at right now. Where are the additional microtransactions coming from? How do you implement the battle pass? And how do you create that sense of FOMO? When do we get, the Marcus Phoenix and Shadow of the Colossus skin? So I don't know why those two came up to me first thing in my head. But yeah, I think that's where, again, my partial worry about this topic comes from, is everything kind of comes back to, how do they monetize it now? And I hate how jaded I am, just because I would love a new single player experience in Bully. I would love a new single player Sleeping Dogs, just because Triad Wars wasn't good. And that was like early, hey, how do we make a game into a service? And then I would love like a new Shadow of the Colossus. And I think maybe it's just because all the games I do play on the regular do have a big service component and a big multiplayer component. That's where, I just want to step back and, play a good single player experience, like Elden Ring, for example. But yeah, Matt, anything else that comes to mind in terms of games you want to see a sequel without the whole monetization aspect to it?
I have a bunch of like games on this list that like I think it'd be like too chunky to go through all of them, but like I would like a sequel to My Life as a King. I don't know how many people played that.
Matt, I don't even know what that is.
It was basically a Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles spin-off.
Okay, I know what it is now.
Yeah. Do you remember WiiWare?
Yeah.
But like that, Mark and the Ninja, I think would be cool, because that's just like an indie game that I would like to see more content for.
Right. Has there been something that has scratched that Mark of the Ninja itch lately? Just because I know that was such a notable indie game at the time, and I would think that someone must have, built upon that in the recent years.
I don't know. I haven't seen anything quite like Mark and the Ninja. I don't know, Rakush, if you've seen anything like that, or if you've even played the original one.
I actually did not play the original one, but considering how much of a side-scrolling kick I've been on, I might actually look that up again. Was Origami kind of similar to Mark of the Ninja?
I guess, yeah. Maybe that's like a 3D version of 3D-esque version of, what do you call it, Mark of the Ninja. That game has always been weird to me, just because the dev who made it had always been posting on a game dev Reddit that I follow, and it's been really weird just like slowly seeing that like come out and eventually hit release, and it's like, oh, this is a real game. It's not just a Reddit topic now.
I think there's also, I cannot remember the name of this game, but like I've seen a couple of speed runs of it where it's almost like this pixel art samurai neon style like design game where like you have to like run through corridors and like
something zeros. I think I know what game.
Katana Zero.
Katana Zero. Thank
yes.
you.
Yeah, that's it.
Katana Zero seems similar to this as well.
That game reminded me a lot more of kind of a side-scrolly Hotline Miami, just because of like the speed that everything happens. Not so much like a stealth like Mark of the Ninja.
Fair,
but,
that's a good point.
Like I guess another indie game which I would want is maybe like Castle Crashers. Like I remember having a lot of fun just like playing that with you guys back in the Xbox 360 days.
Didn't that get us? Wasn't there a Castle Crashers too?
I think it was a re-release of like just all the old content and the DLCs put together.
Yeah, there was a re-release. I know the devs did Battle Block Theater afterwards. I'm not sure what they've done recently, but yeah, I'm surprised they haven't gone back to Castle Crashers, especially considering the rise of the side-scrolling beat-em-ups, just considering everything we've got in the recent years from, TMNT, Shredder's Revenge, and then they just released the Cowabunga collection. You had Streets of Rage 4, River City Girl. So I think the time is ripe for Castle Crashers to come back, just because it did have a lot of charm. I loved all the different characters.
I want to beat them up where I can level something up, like level up stats or something.
I feel that.
Right.
I think it's also like a good time for a lot of like shorter adventures to come out as well. I think something that, Jaren, I know you brought up Games Pass, and this is like a different topic of conversation, I'm sure, but like I do like how much it allows you to just kind of try out games that would normally be like 3-4 hours long and not feel like you've wasted $40 on a short, quote unquote, short experience. Yeah. So I think like the time is right for stuff like that to come out again as well.
Plus, Game Pass is always going to need content. So I think I'm really curious to see how much Game Pass affects the industry. Not only, does it successfully create this need for a service model, the quote unquote, the elusive Netflix of gaming, but does this also allow more indie developers opportunities to not only get their games to a wider audience, but also allow for more experimentation, just because that audience might be more guaranteed with the Xbox promotion than otherwise. So I'm really curious to see how that plays out, if it is actual beneficial to the industry in some way, or is it detrimental in some way?
I would love to know more about how the developers are getting paid from Games Pass itself, specifically. Like, is it kind of like so a lot of movies sometimes will, at least in India, there's a trend of like before a movie comes out, they'll sell the streaming rights to certain like streaming providers like Netflix, Prime, whatever, right? And that's how they recoup their money before it's even out in theaters. Is it kind of like that for developers on Games Pass, where it's like they know for a fact that they're recouping a lot of their development costs, and so like it makes it easier for them to take more risks potentially? I think that would be really cool. I think it's a pretty, it's one of like the first kind of like service driven things that's made me a little bit optimistic for like how games are consumed in the long run in a long time. So yeah,
I'm really curious. Plus, like, I wouldn't have played a few games otherwise if I didn't have them on Game Pass. So at least it's kind of making me play a lot more games than I usually do. But
same thing here. It's the most I've played this year. There's one more game I wanted to talk about as well for sequels that it never got one, is Jade Empire. And it's not because I like was a big fan of it when it came out. In fact, I never played it when it came out. I actually only played it for the first time earlier this year. But what I realized as I was playing it earlier this year is just how dated that game feels now. And I would absolutely love to see a new, either like a remake or like a sequel to that game itself, because I think similar to Sleeping Dogs, I think Jade Empire was one of those games in a genre that did something different and unique and looked at a setting that really like, it was just like something different, even for like even though like I know like the 360 and PS3 generation ended up becoming very grayscale and shooter heavy and stuff like that, like this felt like a very vibrant game as well. And like kind of playing through it as much as I could in this day and age, because it really was difficult to continue playing that game for long periods of time. Like I still would like to see what that game can look like on current technology as well, because a lot of like the backgrounds and textures and foliage and stuff like that, I mean, I see some of that in a game like Horizon, where like, you know, it's extremely vibrant and like, yeah, it's like this post-apocalyptic landscape, but like it still looks gorgeous, you know, and like just from a visual perspective, it would be really fun to see that. I know BioWare is not the same BioWare it used to be then, but yeah.
That would be cool. Mostly just to kind of tie a bow onto this and going back to the Game Pass thing, I think, you know, since we're still in, I want to say like, not necessarily in the prime honeymoon period, but still the honeymoon period of Xbox Game Pass, where I definitely think just for Microsoft to secure, you know, their market share in this and establish this service as something that can be sustainable, that we're going to see, you know, what we saw with early Netflix of them kind of throwing everything they have at the wall and seeing what sticks just to make sure that we have content. So I think for the longest time, this is what the idea of Game Pass is that, oh, we're going to have this service. There's going to be more opportunities for games that might not necessarily have had sequels before to actually find a new home here on Game Pass in order to add value to the service. I think, again, going back to what I said about the Activision acquisition, where the moment that was announced, everyone was saying, oh, what back catalog Activision games can Microsoft pick out, assign to developers and say, hey, make this so we can put on Game Pass. And when you say something like Jade Raymond, when you say something like Jade Empire, you know, that immediately strikes me as a game of, oh, is that within the Microsoft wheelhouse? Is that something they can farm out to a developer that, of course, they've acquired as well? And we can see that on Game Pass in the next few years. Like, again, I think the next few years for Game Pass, especially with all these acquisitions, is going to look really weird when it is Microsoft fighting for that market share. And before it kind of explodes and maybe drops off, that's where, like, before that happens, if it happens, like what's happening to Netflix right now, in my opinion, of course, before the quality starts to suffer, like I really want to see what this is all leading up to and what great games we get here. And who knows, maybe a lot of these third-party games that we've seen, we would want sequels from the past. Maybe they will find some sort of resurgence here, or at least inspire more spiritual successors for, because who knows, maybe there might not be a Shadow of Colossus sequel, but there might be a spiritual successor one that is, I don't know, a roguelike. Everyone seems to be playing those. So that's kind of how I'm taking Game Pass with the sequels. A bit of hope, more, you know, optimism than I've been sharing this episode, but that's kind of how I see everything.
Yeah, I think this is an optimistic time to kind of look at, like, you know, new IPs or like returning IPs as well. So I kind of share that same sentiment with you.
Yeah, that might be me, you know, being a bit too hopeful. Yeah, but who knows?
You know,
this could all go away tomorrow, you guys.
Hey, bro,
So,
let's just enjoy it while it's here. Let's enjoy the joyous moments while we're here.
but yeah, Matt, I've been talking too much. Is there anything else you want to go through real quick?
No, I think that's like most of the things I want to talk about. Like Kingdoms of Amalur, I want that to have a sequel, but that game's like dead.
Yeah.
As hell.
Oh, did you what was the subtitle of the re-release?
Re-Reckoning.
Re-Reckoning.
Oh god,
Yeah.
I was so dumb. Did you guys play it?
I played it. No. I reinstalled the original. That game is rough. It has a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
no.
it has a lot of like gameplay decisions of that time.
Oh, okay, I see.
So
I see.
I don't know how much you guys remember about the development of this game, but the studio that made it was founded by a former pitcher for the
Yeah.
Boston Red Sox who
Mhm.
ended up getting caught in essentially, like, I don't know if embezzling is the right term to use here, just for legal purposes. I don't know what the right term is, but there's a whole bunch of legal troubles with that studio, and the guy who founded that studio has now become a extreme conspiracy theorist nut job as well. So same guy that I ran up to shake his hand.
So we're not seeing a Kingdoms of Amalur sequel anytime soon, is what you're saying.
I don't think that guy's been involved with the studio for like the last 7-8 years, but I'm kind of with Matt where it's like when it came out originally, I thought there was a lot of cool weapon mechanics in that game.
Yes.
To the point where I actually reinstalled that game recently because I really wanted to play it again. And it just doesn't feel as good anymore, which is kind of like an interesting sign to how we are gradually growing and evolving our tastes in games as well, based on how the technology is evolving. It's like, even if we aren't seeing like the overnight change or evolution of the games, like it is happening, right? So that was kind of interesting. I would love to see someone try to tackle a modern version of that game, because I do think that there are a lot of like theories in that game as far as like, you know, mechanics and weapon design and storytelling are concerned that could be pretty cool, right? But I could also use that same argument for a bunch of different franchises. Like Fable would be pretty cool in the modern technology and modern environment as well. But
that's coming out soon. I know
on a new Fable, really?
Yeah.
Holy shit!
It's
yeah.
been announced for a bit, and I know. Yeah, we haven't seen anything about it recently, and I think every time a Summer Games Fest, TJ comes around, people are kind of expecting it to be there, but I'm really curious to see what Fable 2023, 24, 25 looks like, just because it's been so long from the last one, and considering what the original did promise, and how different it is without Peter Molyneux at the helm anymore. I assume he's not at the helm anymore. Not sure how much at the helm.
Oh man, I gotta look up what he's doing at this point, because I have not heard that name in a long time.
Yeah. Speaking about a long time, guys, we this has been a beefier episode than I expected.
Mm-hmm.
I am sorry.
That's what happens when you get a talkative guy like me on here. I'm sorry.
No, this is what happens when I bring up Fortnite at the top of the show. Now I'm embarrassed. But anyway, I want to thank all our friends out there for joining us once again to listen to our many mistakes. I want to thank my best friends in the whole wide world, Matt.
Yo.
I want to thank Rakush for making a return and joining us to talk about, you know, just stuff, anime, games, the usual.
I'll be more ready for the anime conversation next time, now that I know that this is the kind of show you guys are doing.
Nothing's set in stone.
It sounds like anime is pretty set in stone for you guys. So
this was the first time we've talked about anime.
I don't know, bro. I went on the site and I saw that you have a 2-parter on Kakegurui. So
because we're the internet's premier Kakegurui podcast, of course we have to have that.
Is that how you pronounce it? Did I just butcher the pronunciation?
I don't know. Everyone knows I can't pronounce stuff properly.
I'm basically not welcome until I watch that show again. So I got to get on that right now. So let me log off. Let me start watching that show.
Well,
it's a good show.
While Rakush gets cultured, I'm gonna play anime tap games. And that has been the Mistake Zone for yet another week. Of course, thank you always. And Matt, take it away.
This has been the Mistake Zone, and we're all out of this week's Battle Pass.